Hello and welcome to another edition of Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along. My name is Neil Parekh. It is always an honor and a privilege to be the guest host, but today in particular, Jack Curry from the Yes Network is our guest. Jack is an award winning sports journalist. He worked with the New York Times for 22 years, mostly covering the Yankees, but he was also a national baseball correspondent. And like I said, he's a pre and post game analyst for the Yes Network. He is the co-author of Paul O'Neill's book Swing and a Hit, which comes out Tuesday. Yes, I'm wearing my Yankee jersey and Yankee hat. You have to understand, and folks who have watched the show, first of all, thank you to everyone who's joining us for the first time. Folks who are regular watchers know that I'm a Yankee fan, and in today's show, we get to combine two of my biggest loves: the New York Times and the Yankees. We'll of course cover more than just the Yankees. We'll talk about some broader issues, what it's like to write, co-author biographies with sports stars, Jack's experience moving from print to television, and how he managed in terms of under COVID to continue working, etc. But before we get into too many details, let's go ahead and show the promo video that we put together for you, and then we'll bring Jack on as soon as possible. Thank you. This week on Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along, our guest is Jack Curry, an award-winning sports journalist and former sports writer for the New York Times. My name is Neil Parekh, and I will be the guest host. Jack covered the Yankees for much of his 22 years with the New York Times. He is currently a Yankees pre- and post-game analyst for the Yes Network. Jack is the co-author of Paul O'Neill's Swing and a Hit, which comes out May 24th. He is also the co-author of two other New York Times bestsellers, David Cohn's Full Count and Derek Jeter's The Life You Imagine. We'll talk about much more than the Yankees, of course. We'll cover the process of co-authoring books with sports stars, the evolution of sports journalism, Jack's career transition from print to television, the challenges of covering sports during COVID, and much more. We've interviewed several sports writers on Sri's Sunday New York Times Read Along, including Claire Smith, William C. Roden, George Vesey, John Branch, Neil Amdor, Jeanette Howard, and Ian O'Connor. We did a special tribute to Robin Herman with guests Melissa Lutke and Lori Mifflin. We also did a special Inky read-along in partnership with Inquirer Live, featuring the Philadelphia Inquirer's Mike Sealski. The show is produced by Digimentors. We produce high-quality virtual and hybrid events for organizations big and small around the world. We also do social and digital consulting, training, and workshops. Sri Srinivasan is our host. I am the executive producer, Neil Parekh. Our production team includes Paula Kiger, Steve Taylor, Julia Weeks, and Carla Baranakis. Again, Jack Curry is our guest, live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube, and our Digimentors website. That gives you a bit of a preview of what to expect in today's show. Let's go ahead and welcome a few folks that are watching so far, and then we will go ahead and bring on Jack Curry. We have Sojana Chandrasekhar saying good morning with a woohoo. Thank you, Sojana. We have Doug Levy from Beneath the Redwoods in Marin County, California, 5:30 Eastern, 5:30 Pacific time for him. Our first Mets fan. That's okay. I'll forgive you this time. So, my mom is watching and saying good morning to all the Yankee fans. Thank you, Mom. Let's see. Doug grew up as a Mets fan, but when he moved to Washington Heights in New York, it was a problem. He realized, of course. Diane Stefani is excited for me. Thank you, Diane. Yes, I'm thrilled. My sister, Amy, she says, I've been a Yankee fan since he was in our mom's tummy. She doesn't remember me being not being a Yankee fan. I actually trace it back to about 1980 or 81. I actually remember the first game I went to. It was a camp counselor who was my mom had hired as a babysitter for me. Her name was actually Amy. That's who we named my sister after. And yeah, I think I did have a crush on her, but that's not what we're going to be talking about today. Patricia Freudenberg is saying hi from New York. Thank you. Bimal from Austin, Texas. Um, and Miriam Berkeley is watching from a warm New York City, Hell's Kitchen. Jeannie Newman, my art teacher from New York, from Hastings High School, Hastings on Hudson, New York. Jeannie, thank you so much for watching. Glad you were able to get up. I remember going to the baseball game at the new stadium with you. One of the questions I'm going to be asking Jack, which, when we went to that game, the Yanks lost, unfortunately, but they still played New York, New York at the end of the game, and that really confused me. So I'm going to make sure, clarify that with Jack just to make sure. I don't know if that was a mistake that one day or if they play it after every game. And my sister says, thanks, a nice jersey. Paula is checking in on folks who are watching on LinkedIn. We're live on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, YouTube. Please let us know where you're watching from. Like, comment, share. Let folks know that we have a great show in store for you. Stefan, take me out to the ball game. Thank you. Thank you, Stefan. Wayne Camadoy, art director for the New York Times, is watching from Bergen County, New Jersey. We will be sharing. There's an excerpt in the New York Times online today, in print tomorrow, from the book. Wayne put that together. Wayne, thanks for the heads up on that. An excerpt from Jack's book. And Liz is giving me a little insight here. Liza Minnelli's version means they lost. Frank Sinatra, they won. I got to break it to you though, Liza. I know it was Frank's version that day when we lost. So I don't know. We'll try and suss that out. But again, for folks who are watching, our guest today is Jack Curry. He is an award-winning sports journalist, 22 years with the New York Times, as a Yankees beat writer and national correspondent, co-author of Paul O'Neill's book, Swing and a Hit, which comes out Tuesday. He also co-wrote books with David Cohn and Derek Jeter. David Cohn's Full Count and Derek Jeter's The Life You Imagine. Without further ado, Jack, pretty good build-up, right?
Neil,
Jack Curry.
Good to be with you, and you look very good in the pinstripes, and I appreciate your passion. There's nothing better than when you write about or speak about baseball to encounter someone who shares that passion for the sport. So I can tell, even though you and I have only met across the last week, that we are clearly kindred spirits in our love of baseball.
Thank you. Absolutely. I actually went. So before I had this jersey, I actually was in Seattle when they had the All-Star game there, and went there. This was 2001, if I'm not mistaken, when I first moved out there. And so I actually waited in line. Like one or two things I actually did was to get a picture taken on a fake cover of the Sporting News in a batting stance with a Yankee shirt on. Rookie call up gets his chance. That's the closest I came. I played Little League, but you played Little League as well, Jack, right?
I actually played baseball through high school.
Through high school.
Went to Fordham, went to one practice. Paul Blair was actually the coach, the former Orioles outfielder, the former Yankee outfielder.
Yankees. First base outfielder, if I'm not mistaken.
He was terrific outfielder, Gold Glove winner. The practice took 4.5 hours. I got back to campus because Fordham didn't have its own baseball field at the time. There weren't any DoorDashes or Uber Eats, so I missed dinner that night. I surveyed the landscape of the players who were on the team that day, and I think I would have made the team. I don't think I would have started. I would have been on the bench. And the next day I signed up for the school radio station and the school newspaper. And that was the end of my playing career.
That's sometimes how things work out, certainly. Ken Fisher is trying to start a roll call. at least from Iowa. It's not quite the Bleacher Creatures roll call, which again, it's gonna be hard for me not to go heavy baseball. But that's when when you're at the stadium, you get the fans in right field chanting each player's name, waiting for them to doff their hat, acknowledge them in some way. That's got to be some experience to be on the field for the first time and hear your name called like that.
You mentioned David Cohn previously in the book I
Yeah,
wrote with him. After David retired, he actually wanted to experience what it was like to be out with the Bleacher Creatures. And I was writing for the Times at the time, and I shadowed him out in the bleachers, and it was quite an experience because I mentioned passion earlier. And if you want to talk about passionate fans, spend a day out there, spend a few innings out there. So I got the chance to watch it through David's eyes, which was pretty cool.
absolutely, absolutely. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about your book with Paul O'Neill. David Cohn, five-time World Series champion, pitched for the Yankees and of course the Mets, the Royals, where he started his career. He's on the Yes Network with you now as a colleague, but he wrote, "I've always known how superb and how prepared Paul O'Neill was as a hitter. After reading Swing and a Hit, now I know all of O'Neill's secrets and sacrifices, everything that helped make him such a splendid hitter. With every page I read, it was evident how Paul obsessed over the art of hitting and how he learned from some of the game's best hitters. I loved competing with and against Paul. I love this book just as much." Um, can you tell us, Jack? Tell us what it was like to write this book with Paul O'Neill. You've co-authored books with David Cohn and Derek Jeter as well. Um, it's what's the process like of working with someone? It's their story, it's their book. What's the role that you play?
Well, in the Cohn and O'Neill instances, especially, we're talking about the time frame when I wrote those books. Both players are retired. Both players are in their 50s. I've had relationships with both players that extended 25 or 30 years. So with Paul specifically, I met him in 1993 when the Yankees acquired him from the Cincinnati Reds. And we just had a really quick and easy connection. And it revolved around hitting, talking about hitting. Paul didn't always want to talk about hitting. If he was in a slump, there would be times where he would wave you away. And there's also an art to working a baseball clubhouse and getting to strengthen and form these relationships with people. And Paul and I just clicked from the beginning. And I used to kind of chuckle when some people said he was ornery and unapproachable, because there were times where he was. But for some reason, we just found an area where we did connect. And a few years ago, Neil, I said to him, on the heels of doing the book with Cohn, I'd love to do a hitting book with you. I'd love to get inside your mind. And the way that I think I convinced Paul to do this was, yes, this story is about Paul's hitting approach and Paul's hitting theories and his hitting philosophies and how he feels he would hit today. But we also brought in the people who impacted him as a hitter. So you'll hear about Pete Rose, Don Mattingly, Bernie Williams, Joe Torre, Derek Jeter, Ted Williams, because Ted Williams once gave him a phone call and gave him a hitting lesson. And I said to Paul, this is not just about you. It's about the people who impacted you. And I think he liked the fact that he was going to get the chance to bring those people to light as well.
Absolutely. And what I think was cool, the way you set up that you and Paul set up the book. Each chapter is a different inning. That's of course the subtitle of the book, and focusing on each of these different players, in some case a manager. There's even a piece about Ted Williams, which is excerpted in the Times today. In fact, it's online today. It'll be in print tomorrow, which is pretty cool. Um, and shout out to Wayne Camadoy for giving us the heads up on that it was going to be in the Times. We're going to call that up for you real quick.
Wayne's a former colleague. Wayne's a very, very talented art director. And I want to thank Ben Hoffman, who I communicated with to make this excerpt come to life in the Times. And Neil, this was actually probably my favorite chapter to write, because Paul O'Neill had over 2,000 hits in the major leagues. He's got 5 World Series rings. He's got a batting title. When we spoke about this phone call that he received from Ted Williams, even though it was almost 30 years ago, 25 years ago, he became a little league kid getting advice from his dad. That was the equivalent of Paul's emotions in recollecting this phone call. And some of the advice that Williams gave him just resonated with Paul and was kind of the way he had always been as a hitter. But to hear Ted Williams say to you, for instance, don't change yourself, don't change for anyone. Well, that's the way Paul was as a hitter. He listened to advice and he wanted advice from coaches and teammates, but he had a certain way that he hit, and he didn't want to be disrupted by someone else who thought, hey, maybe you should get your leg kick down a little faster, or maybe you should have a little bit of more uppercut to your swing. Paul wanted to make sure that he felt comfortable at the plate.
Absolutely, which is great. And speaking of former colleagues, want to give a shout out to Carla Baranakis. She is watching from New Jersey. She wants to say hello, and she's a favorite Tony Oliva fan. We'll talk about the Twins at some point, I'm sure. But Carla has been a producer on our show for a number of years now. Has brought us some incredible guests, you included. There's a host of sports writers we've had, several former colleagues of yours, Claire Smith, Bill Roden, George Vesey, John Branch, Neil Amdor, all from the Times, Jeanette Howard, who wrote a book with Billie Jean King, and Ian O'Connor. We also did a special treat to Robin Herman, who passed away, trailblazing sports writer. Melissa Lutke and Lori Mifflin were our guests for that show. And you have, Melissa in particular says hi. And I know you were remembering Lori fondly from your days as is clerk the official term, or copy boy? What's the...
When I was hired, Neil, at the New York Times in 1987, I was hired as a writing clerk.
A writing
clerk. A program called the Writing Program. Honestly, I'm not even sure if it exists anymore. My guess is it doesn't. But you were part of a 2-year program to try and prove to the Times that you could eventually ascend to being a reporter. But while you were on that trail, you answered phones, you made copies, you ran sheets to the composing room. So it was a process. And on your off hours or your off days, you were trying to get stories into the paper. So I must say, at that time, you remember the people who were positive and optimistic and giving you hope. Lori Mifflin was definitely one of those people, made many story suggestions to her, and I appreciated her honesty about the ones that were good and the ones that didn't make it. And then you started this part of the conversation mentioning Carla. Mm-hmm. When you're writing on deadline and there's stress and there's pressure, and I'm actually an even-keeled guy. Even on deadline, I've never been someone who gets crazed, but inside you're always crazed. Carla was always a reassuring voice to hear on the other end of the line, because she does have a soothing quality about herself and about her editing. So you're mentioning a lot of people that bring back great memories to me. And that one graphic that you showed with all those sports writers, I've shared a press box or an office with all of them. And that's a murderer's row right there, Neil. That's a lot of talents. And that's a lot of people who I've had the pleasure of being teammates with along the way.
Absolutely. And I can say that these were some of our best shows that we've done on Sree's Sunday New York Times Read Along. You know, I had the honor of interviewing Claire Smith, which was, I mean, just incredible to talk with her about her time covering baseball, but also her work as a woman in sports and her journey as well. So that's always been special. But of course, we also try when we bring on sports writers, because we know that we have a global audience. It's not just a show for Yankee fans, unfortunately. Otherwise, I'd be more than happy to do a deep dive on all things Yankees or even all things sports. But we also want to kind of broaden that look a little bit and talk about some of the larger issues. So one of the things I wanted to ask you about is over the last 2.5 years, this process for you. How did you adjust to covering sports under COVID? In when everything shut down in March of 2020, there was no access, there was no interaction, with players. You were opening baseball card packs on Yes Network, and you found a really great DJ LeMahieu card in one of the videos I saw. Tell us about that.
Neil, it was time to be creative. As you just mentioned, that the world had changed around us. The world had changed dramatically. There was a lot of sadness. There was a feeling of how are we going to get out of this? And the S Network was great because they wanted creativity, they wanted cleverness. So one of the things I did end up doing as we were waiting for baseball to return was just opening baseball cards live on our Twitter feed and having something to say about each card. Hopefully I knew all of the guys of the cards that I opened up, and I actually had some fun doing that. Beyond that, where I'm sitting right now, I did, gosh, 50 interviews along the way. We did so many interviews of former Yankee players that the Yes Network actually turned it into a 90-minute show. We interviewed so many 90s Yankees from that dynastic run that they had, from Jeter to Posada to Pettit to Bernie Williams, that we were able to turn it into a show. I interviewed Dr. Anthony Fauci from this seat. I'm pretty sure we were the first regional sports network that had an interview with him. And half the interview, of course, was about what was going on in the world. But then I think the second half that he enjoyed more, just talked to him about baseball because he had grown up as a New York Yankee fan. So I think, Neil, the operative word was being creative and being ambitious and understanding that Zoom was your friend. I did find out that people were, as long as they had access to Zoom, and 99% of the people that I contacted did, they were very engaged and they were very willing and very interested in doing these interviews as well. So we ended up churning out a lot of content. And then there were moments where I even did, because of studio restrictions, we were only allowed to have a certain number of people in our studio, the COVID restrictions. There were times where I did pre-games and post-games from here. And that was daunting because I'm used to being in the studio. I'm used to having the microphone on, an earpiece in. I'm speaking with Bob Lorenz, who typically hosts the pregame and postgame with me. The cameramen or camera people are right across from me. Well, in my office here, I had the camera. I had to turn it on. I had to make sure the mic was working. And sometimes if something wasn't perfect, you get a little nervous and wonder if your live show is going to have a hiccup or two.
Well, that's a reality of live shows, right? You have some hiccups. I mean, even with returning to sets and the cameras. I mean, I'm for me as a writer, a career in marketing and communications. You can't escape typos. They're going to happen. You hope they don't happen in the headline. You hope they don't happen on the front page of something. But like with any live show, you may have a hiccup or two. I would assume the difference might be that when you're doing this from home, you're all alone effectively. I mean, I'm in my office, at home. You're not in a studio where you can get through that, and then as soon as you finish, have a chuckle and kind of laugh it off, right?
100%. And I must say, for all of the moments that I did do live TV from here, we only had one hiccup. And it was something so basic that it's hilarious. But there was one day where they kept saying to me, "We can't hear your audio." And I was supposed to be on a 30-minute pregame show, and they kept saying, "We can't hear your audio. We can't hear your audio." And finally, one of our tech managers said, "Did you change the batteries in the microphone?" And I said, "No, I didn't know if I was supposed to change the batteries in the microphone." He said, "Change the batteries in the microphone." We did that, and I made it for the last 2 minutes of that 30-minute pregame show. So it was a lesson learned that
Yeah.
we had gobbled up the batteries. But I actually feel very fortunate that was the only hiccup along the way.
That's interesting. You should say that. Just last week, I was interviewing Fernanda Santos, who is
Mhm.
she wrote, if you know, she
Mhm.
co-wrote Americano, among other things, and we talked about her husband who passed away, and I made reference to the fact that she's a widow. I lost my father about 13 years ago, and started choking up, so I muted myself so I could and put her on full screen so I could kind of compose myself. I forgot to unmute myself coming back. Now, luckily that was a minute. I was reading comments on the air like I'm about to now. But yeah, these things happen, right? Um,
It's part of the business, and I worked with Ken Singleton,
yep,
great former major league player who was a terrific broadcaster at Yes, and I leaned on him for advice, and his best piece of advice was when you have a problem or you have an issue, you just got to bulldoze through it. Because if you stop while you're on TV after mispronouncing a word or getting a statistic incorrect, you're just bringing attention to it. So his
exactly.
advice was barrel on through it, get to the next point.
Do what you can. Just I mean, and part of it is also you may have a script, but the audience doesn't have your script. They don't know if you miss a question or if you didn't put a graphic on screen, or if some transition didn't work. It's like anyone with a theater background knows. You just keep going.
Right.
And it looks the audience, for all the audience knows, that's exactly what was supposed to happen
Right.
in
Right.
that moment. Sharing a few more comments. Again, my sister is watching from Seattle. She woke up early. She's capturing it great. I'm living my dream, and the enthusiasm is bursting out of me. I will do my best to keep it in control. Sujana Chandrasekhar was part of the first group of girls allowed into Little League in New York City, and it made the news, which is interesting. Stefan talks about his fondest memories. One of his fondest memories going to Yankee Stadium on that day with his grandfather. And yeah, the names he's mentioning: Munson, Mickey Rivers, Cliff Johnson, Ron Guidry. My favorites were Munson, Willie Randolph, Ron Guidry. That's who I looked up to. We had Ernie Suggs on as a guest a couple of weeks ago, and I know that he reached out on Twitter. Was thrilled to see that you were going to be joining us. Ernie is with the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, but is originally from New York, and is a Yankee fan. He gets some static about that down in Atlanta, of course. Let's see. Anand Babu is watching, and let's see who else. Scrolling down on the comments. Um, oh, here's a comment from Ernie. He heard Kay say you were a hip hop head after Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers came out. What can you tell us about that?
I went to Fordham in the 80s, and Fordham is in the Bronx. And some of my roommates and friends in college were really into rap music. And growing up in Jersey, I was a Springsteen guy, but I also liked punk and new wave. I really like to listen to anything. I love reggae. But some of my college roommates were the ones who turned me on to rap music. I actually ended up going to see Run DMC in 1985, uh, a concert I'll never forget. And I've just stayed attracted to that style of music. I have one nephew who's in a couple of bands right now, and I have another nephew who knows way more about rap and hip hop than I do. I can't give a full analysis to Ernie of the Kendrick Lamar album. I've listened to a few songs, and what I have heard, I've thought that as far as Kendrick Lamar is concerned, pretty much everything this guy puts out is genius. So I,
And well,
I owe
surprise worthy,
Ernie
in fact.
I owe him a deeper analysis. But for right now, I would say what I've listened to, I really like, and I'm eager to listen to the rest of it.
Absolutely. You're also a big Clash fan, right?
I pretty much wear that on my sleeve on Twitter. The Clash is my favorite band of all time. My brother and I were 16 and 18. Saw them two or three times. They played in New York City, and it just stayed with me until this moment. And I think Joe Strummer, their lead singer, we miss his wisdom, and what he had to say about people and the way you should treat people and the way you should live your life. was valuable. So even beyond the music, I always appreciated the way he lived his life and how he looked out for the little guy. So yeah, I love the Clash. That you want to talk about the Yankees, I'm here. But if you want to talk about the Clash, the show would probably be a little bit longer.
And it's an example of how we try and broaden the topics we cover on this show. We had Jim Roberts on as a guest, another former New York Times colleague, and it was great to talk about the Grateful Dead with him. He is a serious Deadhead. So it's always interesting to get a little bit more out of our guests, a little bit more of kind of what their interests are, what their background is, beyond what you might see on the Yes Network. I don't know if the Clash has come up on any pre or post game analyses, Jack, but
Well, I'll let you in on a little secret, Neil, and hopefully your audience will see this now. For the last several years, when we open every show, the analyst has to have an opening comment. So the graphics director always asks, "What's your opening comment?" Because they want to have a headline, a
sure,
chyron, a little graphic that goes underneath your name
like
as
what
you
we
read
have
your opening comment.
going right now.
I'm on a streak of about 300 games where every one of my opening comments has been a song title.
Nice.
For instance, yesterday when Cortez pitched for the Yankees,
Yep.
my headline was
Nasty Nestor.
Magical Mystery Tour, because he has been such an amazing revelation for them this year that I feel as if he's on his own magical mystery tour. So my own little ode to music actually appears in every show.
That's incredible. That's incredible. I'm gonna have to talk to you later about how I can get Yes here in DC. If there's any way to make that happen. I actually got YouTube Live so I could get the MLB network, so I could get my baseball fix. But whenever I go up to New York, my sister still has a place in Fort Lee. The first thing I do is I put on the Yes Network so I can watch
Happy to hear that. We're
great
happy to hear that.
great content. I mean, just everything from the interviews to the history. I'll watch old games. I mean, this is it's easy for me. That's fun. Wayne actually had a comment. Let me get back to that. That you still have a lot of fans from his days in the sports department. It was a big loss when you left for Yes. Not surprised with your success on TV, but he's also honored to have had a couple of pages framed in your office. So let's talk about that first. You're right behind you. You have 3 pages uh, on the wall. What's up there?
Great gift that my wife gave to me. These are all from the 1996 season. This one, I got to go this way. This one over here is when the Yankees made it to the World Series in 1996. The one right behind me is Bernie Williams, which is a great. Wayne, if you did that, and I of course I believe you did because you recognize it. Beautiful display of Bernie swinging, and then that one over there. Got to go this way.
It's hard. It's hard.
Got to go this way. That one over there is Paul O'Neill jumping onto the pile after the Yankees won the World Series in 1996. So my wife gave those to me as a Christmas present one year, and fantastic. And I've hung them wherever we've hung our hat, and I just love having them behind me. I always tell people I'm thrilled that I worked for the Times for as long as I did, and though I'm a TV guy now, I still consider myself a writer, and that's why I write books, and I hope that my writing skills still resonate when I'm on the air. But yes, Wayne, these are some pretty wonderful layouts, and I'm really happy to have them in my office.
And in addition to the layouts, and I'm keeping you in full screen, Jack, so we can get a better look at those layouts. On over behind your left shoulder, you've got 5 little statues there, right? New York Emmys?
Right, because I work with a lot of talented people, Neil. I've been fortunate enough to be part of 5 New York Emmys. And when we first started doing Zooms, Yes wanted our backgrounds to look nice. And one of our directors said, everything behind you looks kind of barren. Can you put some Emmys back there? I'm sure you got a few Emmys. So that's how they ended up back there. But I wanted to make sure I balanced the scales. So there are also a few baseballs in front of those Emmys. And those baseballs, one's from Little League, one's from a summer league team I played on, and one's from high school from a couple of home runs I actually hit in my career way back when. And to me, the baseballs are in front because the baseballs signify my passion and my love of baseball. And without those baseballs and without being a kid who chased his own sports journalist dream, those statues behind never exist. So I like having the baseballs and the Emmys on the same table there.
You talked about your writing. Wayne talked about your work with the New York Times again for 22 years. I actually remember reading your work in the Times. It goes back to when I was in high school, and after that as well. But tell us a little bit about that transition. I mean, we can see it on your wall, the transition from print to television. You talked about Ken Singleton taking you under his wing. If we're going to talk about TV, I got to throw in Phil Rizzuto and Bill White. I grew up watching WPIX, and I was this close, Jack, to playing the Yankees theme song on the show. But I want to make sure I don't get run afoul of any copyright issues. But what was that transition like? I mean, did you actually? I'm going to ask the question this way: do you feel like you fully made that transition with your return to writing books and co-authoring books with Derek Jeter, David Cohn, Paul O'Neill? You haven't given up writing, certainly.
No, I'll never give up writing. I think what happened, though, Neil, is I'd been at the Times for more than 20 years. I had covered everything I felt I wanted to cover, from World Series to All-Star games to visiting, Japan, Colombia, Venezuela, Cuba, Dominican Republic, so many places that I had the opportunity to visit as a New York Times writer. And I had people in my ear about giving broadcast journalism a try. One of them was Michael Kay, who Ernie mentioned earlier. He's a good friend of mine. We both attended Fordham, although Michael was 4 years ahead of me. I was a freshman. He had already graduated. He was still somebody you could see on campus. And I just felt the time I was in my career, if I was going to try and make a switch, that was the time to do it. And I'm thankful to have had what I consider two dream careers. And I don't say that in a haughty manner. I say that in a humbled manner, because to say that you wrote for the New York Times, that's a dream job. To say that you're a studio analyst for the YES Network, the largest regional sports network in the country, that's a dream job as well. So I just feel very blessed to have had both of these opportunities. And I feel very blessed that the second part of my career has moved along as smoothly as it has, because there's no guarantee that just because you could write a story in a press box, that you can then speak eloquently and coherently and interestingly on TV. Fortunately for me, I've proven that I can do that.
A quick question from our audience. Patricia Freudenberg asked, have you ever had to write a sports obituary?
Patricia, that is a great question. And the answer is yes. And I didn't get a byline on it, but I contributed to George Steinbrenner's obit.
Oh, really?
I'm pretty sure Richard Goldstein, did he write the obit, or maybe Joe Durso? But I know that they asked me, because I had covered the Yankees for so long, if I could send along some information or some pieces of George's life. And I'm really taxing my memory here as well. I think they might have asked me to do the same thing for Yogi Berra, but I didn't.
Oh, wow.
I didn't write it. It was, can you take a look at this, and if you see any areas, could you maybe add some content?
Yeah, it was actually Dick Goldstein that wrote the got the byline at least.
Oh, and he, like I said, I may have contributed 5%, and Dick may not even know that, because sometimes these were in a file in a system, and you took a look at them. But he is terrific at that. He does a wonderful job with that.
Absolutely, and there's the obit there. I can make that just a little bit bigger for folks. George Steinbrenner, who built Yankees into powerhouse, dies at 80. You mentioned Yogi Berra as well. Let's go ahead and pick up a couple of pictures that we have. I'm going to start with this picture of you and Yogi. You met him after you moved to the YES Network, I believe, right?
Well, I'd interviewed Yogi before then. In fact, I've sat next to Yogi in press boxes when he was working. Actually, he was working for the Houston Astros at one point, and I was at Shea
He
Stadium
was
covering a game. He sat right next to me in the press box. So this is at
during his
Yogi's.
exile.
Yes, this is at Yogi's Museum, which if anyone ever gets a chance, it's on the campus of Montclair State. I went there as recently as 2 weeks ago. Wonderful place, has all of Yogi's career. We would do a Yes Network show, an off-season show from there every year, and Yogi would hang out with us. This is essentially their office, but it was our green room. Nice. And I didn't even know my producer, Jared Boschnack, snapped that picture. But I just love it. I love the fact that I've got a private audience with Yogi Berra, and I'm getting some wisdom from him right there.
And so you also spent some time at the museum at a book signing. And there's our friend Carla Baranakis with you, and you're in the center, Carla to your right, of course, and David Cohn. And this is, of course, Full Count. That I want to make sure people see the cover right here. So you did the book signing there at the museum.
That was a lot of fun to do. Good to see Carla as always. And Coney was great with promoting that book and making sure that we got the word out. I should mention a little promotion. I'm actually doing a book signing on Thursday.
That's right.
At Books and Greetings in Northvale, New Jersey, for the Paul O'Neill book. That's about 10 minutes from my house. It's just me. I'll be there signing the book. I'll do my best to impersonate Paul's voice if anybody wants me to do that. But it's just a Jack Curry signing at Books and Greetings, May 26th, 6 p.m.
We included that in the Twitter thread that we put together for the show to promote all things Jack Curry. So I definitely encourage people to get out. There's another fun picture that we were able to get. Who's who in this picture?
Well, the shorter guy is me. I'm with the interesting haircut there, like a little. I don't know what I got going on with the haircut, but that's my brother Rob and I visiting the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, and we're standing in front of Babe Ruth's locker. And best vacation I ever had as a kid, Neil. I remember that as if it was yesterday. I was 8. I believe my brother was 10. And interestingly enough, I dedicate the O'Neill book to my brother and actually my mother-in-law, who passed away about a year ago. My mother-in-law, for obvious reasons, we miss her greatly. And my brother, for obvious reasons, he really was the person who introduced me to baseball and took the time to make sure that his little brother knew how to throw a ball properly and swing a bat properly. So he is the person who the book is dedicated to. And if he's watching this, he just found that out because he hasn't actually seen the book. He hasn't
seen it yet.
So I broke some news. I'd rather him see it when he opens the book, but he might know now.
For Rob, a devoted big brother who taught me how to throw a ball and swing a bat and cultivated my lifelong love of baseball. Thanks for always being there.
Yes.
Very, very special. And for your mother-in-law as well, for Mrs. O, a loving mother-in-law whose abundant baseball knowledge was surpassed only by her endless wisdom and guidance. We all miss you. So my condolences on that. That is,
thank you.
It's Neil. just great to see that. There's some other special pictures that we want to pull up. We have you throwing out the first pitch with Coney, I assume in celebration of the book, and it's shot with two former Yankees now, Gary Sanchez and Thairo Estrada. That's Gary Sanchez on the left. But I think the most important picture, this is one of you and Anthony Rizzo taken recently. He hit 3 home runs in a game. You've hit 3 home runs as well, right?
So I'm nothing if not hopefully comical and a little self-deprecating once in a while. So I posted this picture on Facebook, and Rizzo hit 3 homers in a game that week. I think it was a day or two earlier, and it came up during the interview. So when I posted this picture, I said, one of us has hit 3 homers in a major league game, and one of us has hit 6 homers in a little league game. I'm sorry, not in a little league game, in a wiffle ball game. So I just wanted to have a little fun with that because obviously Anthony Rizzo is a prolific major league hitter, and it's always cool to be on the field post game interviewing somebody. There's an adrenaline and an electricity to doing that. And I just wanted to tell people my little wiffle ball experience along the way, just trying to be self-deprecating.
Absolutely. I want to pull in a couple of comments. Jeannie Newman, my high school art teacher, who I mentioned earlier. We were talking about favorite players. Hers are Elston Howard, Whitey Ford, uh, Mickey Mantle, Roger Maris. Of course, she's dating herself just a little bit by her own admission. But I think that the last picture that we want to show, and I know that you need to get going, Jack. Jack has to leave for a wedding, so we want to give him time to get on the road. The shot with Paul O'Neill, but we want to give you a chance to talk about the shirt. No, not the shirt in this picture, but
I know I have the same shirt on. I really didn't prepare well enough for this, Neil. But obviously, this is my wife, Pamela. I appreciate you popping this picture up. And she's the person I dedicated my first 2 books to. And anything I happen in my career, anything that happens or anything that I've accomplished doesn't happen without her love and inspiration. So I appreciate the fact that we're able to show this picture of her. And she'll yell at me, or she won't yell at me. She'll scold me for having the same shirt on now as I have in that picture, but she'll be happy that we had the opportunity to have this discussion.
Absolutely. My wife's name is Pam as well, so there's another point of connection. We have been talking with Jack Curry, who was a longtime sports writer for the New York Times, 22 years, in fact, covering the Yankees for the most part, but also a national baseball writer. He wrote a book with Paul O'Neill. He was co-author on that book, Swing and a Hit, 9 Innings of What Baseball Taught Me. You can get the book by going to paulo'neillbook.com to purchase it. And we want to thank Jack for giving us this time on Sunday morning. With your schedule, I know how many games you cover and personal obligations as well. But this was a great conversation. Really appreciate you giving us a little bit of that insight in terms of covering baseball during COVID. That transition from from print to TV, and we talked about rap and the Clash. So Kendrick Lamar got a shout out as well.
That's perfect. That's a perfect interview for me, Neil, and I appreciate you having me on. I appreciate everyone who helped put this together, particularly Carla. And as I say goodbye, I think since this was a sports writing discussion, we probably would be remiss if we didn't mention the passing of Roger Angell. Roger was an elegant man in the press box. I got the chance to have so many baseball conversations with him. And I told this story on the Yes Network yesterday, and I'd like to repeat it.
Please.
Roger wrote hundreds of thousands of memorable words, and I cherished any chance I had to read him. When I left the Times, he sent me a handwritten note and said, I wish you luck on the next chapter of your career, and I know you're going to do well, but I will miss reading you in the New York Times every day. And that was as humbling and amazing a note as I've ever received from anyone. So
absolutely,
we will miss Roger. We will miss his writing, but we have the opportunity to still read what he wrote and remember everything that he left for us.
Well, and I thank you for bringing that up, Jack. I'm sorry that I forgot to fit that in. We actually had some of your tweets ready. In terms of earlier tweets, he was 93, one of the greatest baseball writers ever. This is when it was announced that he would be into the Hall of Fame. This was what you shared upon his passing. Elegance as a writer and as a person. Roger Angell epitomized elegance. Fortunate to have shared many baseball conversations with Roger. You also earlier had said the most artistic of baseball writers turns 100 today. I've been fortunate to read his prose. Even more fortunate to share many a press box with him. So your admiration for him definitely shows, and really appreciate your bringing that up. I mean, a baseball writer extraordinaire, poet, baseball poet laureate. Although I'm not sure I read a few things. I'm not sure that he appreciated that moniker, but his fans certainly did.
Yes, you read Roger writing about baseball, and it's the equivalent of a high school or a college kid watching Mike Trout take batting practice and saying, "I don't think I can do it as well as he just did it." So yes, Roger was the best. He was great.
Absolutely. We before you go, and I don't want you to get in trouble with your wife. Patricia, thanks you for sharing some great memories. We have Dr. Chandrasekhar says you should ask Mindy Franklin Levine for a Run DMC T-shirt. I'm not quite sure the reference on that. I don't know
Well, the
Mindy.
Yankees
Do you
used to
know
have
Mindy?
some relievers where they called them it was Betances, Miller, and oh gosh, yes, I understand the reference. We'll have to
Betances,
do that.
Miller, and who else would have been coming in?
Chapman. It was Chapman. I think it
Chapman was
was
there.
Dellin, Miller, and Chapman.
Maybe.
I think.
Okay. Great. Uh, my Patricia says beautiful tribute to Roger. My mom, of course, says great interview. Thank you, Mom. Appreciate that. For folks who are watching, I want to assure you, if you stick around, we will be covering the New York Times. We will go through a special report on Haiti, which you don't want to miss. But we will let Jack excuse Jack this morning and make sure you get on the road 7 minutes behind schedule, Jack. Hopefully you can make that up.
No, I'm ready. I appreciate this, Neil. I could
Hitting
have
the
talked to
lights.
you for the entire morning, and thanks again for helping promote our book. And I look forward to talking to you again down the line.
Absolutely. Thank you, Jack. Again, our guest was Jack Curry, former sports writer, television analyst with the Yes Network, and co-author of a book with Paul O'Neill. Again, we'll put that on the screen as Jack makes his exit. 9 innings of what baseball taught me. He also wrote books with David Cohn and Derek Jeter. So what we'd like to do now is turn our attention to the New York Times, as I promised. We intentionally left the paper for the second half of our show so that we can focus on Jack. But thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciated that. And we see more comments are coming in. Jeannie says, thanks, great job. Thanks for giving me a heads up. Really appreciate it, Jeannie. It means a lot that you were able to watch. So what we'll do now is switch our attention to the New York Times, and we will go through the paper like we usually do. It's over here on our New York Times cam. And we'll take your comments, we'll take your questions, and the again, the important thing that we want to spend some time on is uh, the display photo on the front page about Haiti. There's a whole special section there, but we'll go ahead and take a look and jump into the paper. So over here, you see the front page. Opening that up right here, ransom. Um, this is what's on the display photo. Uh, More than 70 years before Americans abolished slavery, enslaved Africans in the French colony of Saint Domingue threw off their shackles and rebelled. Next, they beat Napoleon's forces and declared independence, creating the first free black country in the Americas, Haiti. 2 decades later, a brigade of French warships loomed off Haiti's coastline. The French issued an ultimatum: war or hand over a staggering sum in reparations to Haiti's former enslavers. It was known as the independence debt, but that was a misnomer. It was a ransom that Haiti paid for generations. The New York Times scoured thousands of pages of original documents in Haiti, France, and the United States to determine exactly how much Haitians paid for their freedom. So we will take a close look at that when we get that special section. But what we want to do is to make sure that we also cover the rest of the paper and take a look at what else is in the paper this Sunday. The lead story is Trump's 20 election lies take root in state houses. 44% of GOP legislators in 9 states tried to undermine count, Times finds. Below the fold, she helped transform. Um, she helped transform reading lessons. Now she's backtracking. First graders at PS 249 in Brooklyn, one of many U.S. schools that use Professor Lucy Calkin's curriculum to teach reading. So that's interesting. Uh, these two stories on the right: a spiritual ally offering cover for Putin's war. That's the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. And then Trump's choice runs into wall in Georgia race. That's U.S. election news. So that's the front page of the A section. This is that special section on the ransom that we will be covering in a little bit. So I'll set that aside. The book review, Secrets and Lies. Camille Koshner's memoir, Familia Grande, sparked a national reckoning about incest in France. That's interesting. Arts and Leisure, a twisting, tumultuous theater season. COVID is obviously the cause for that. And it's a special on the Tony Awards. So that will merit some review. The Sunday Review. Now, this is harkening back to I'm trying to find words to describe it. The massacre, the racially motivated shooting in Buffalo. There's an article, "The Great Replacement Conspiracy is far older than Fox News." At the top, the real question is not whether Puerto Ricans should pay taxes, but whether the United States should continue to treat Puerto Rico as a colony. You shouldn't need a doctor's note to get baby formula. That's certainly baby formula has been a major topic in the news recently. This front page piece is by Charles Blow, another former guest on the show. And it's 2 years after George Floyd's murder. The street art created during that summer's uprising and the hope it inspired is fading away. That is interesting. We have Tom Cruise, the last movie star. As you might know, another Top Gun movie is coming out. It's already out in various. They've had various openings. The film industry hopes Tom Cruise can bring adults back to theaters. And then at the bottom, Jack Welch and the rise of CEOs behaving badly. The manager of the century redefined what it meant to be a boss at GE, and that model persists. Sunday Styles. Baz Luhrmann takes on an American icon in Elvis, a big film by a big dreamer. So that's what the front page looks like. You see the bottom half there. And then the New York Times Magazine, surviving the siege of Kharkiv, how Ukrainians in a city 25 miles from the Russian border have forged a new wartime culture. So we'll definitely go through and take a look at some of the stories here. Not sure if I turned the sections correctly when I flipped them over, but we'll certainly take a look. A couple of comments. Wayne says, great interview with Jack. Excerpt has such detail and is fascinating. The other innings of the book will be worth a read, even for Mets fans. That's a reference to the excerpt that's in the New York Times today online about Paul O'Neill's conversation with Ted Williams. And then let's see what else we'll cover. And Macron says he worked in Haiti after 2010 hurricane earthquake and the cholera outbreak. It does not get worse. Does not get worse working there. Absolutely. So let's take a good look at that. Before we go there, let's take a look at the front page because we have time to enjoy the paper to run through it, and we'll keep an eye on the comments. Again, if you're watching, please let us know where you're watching from. Comment, and share. Our guest today was sports writer Jack Curry, who who was co-author on Swinging a Hit with Paul O'Neill. So we will go ahead and take a look at the rest of the paper. The Times Insider column, Investigating Haiti's Double Debt by Emmett Lindner. So this is a closer look at the investigation that we'll be taking a look at. This is always my favorite piece in the Times, inside the Times, the story behind the story. On page 3, which is not available online, you get several tidbits. An attempt by the Times to draw you into the paper. Shoes worn by Miles Frost, who plays Michael Jackson in the Broadway musical MJ, had to be restructured after the star fractured a toe while moonwalking. That's from college kid to king of pop in record time. It's in the arts and leisure section. Excuse me. In 2020, 45% of men and 54% of women living alone in the U.S. lacked the resources to pay for their basic living needs, according to University of Massachusetts Boston Elder Index. More than 50 million people worldwide have interacted with Dungeons and Dragons since it was created in the mid 70s. A friend of mine posted about this on Facebook. The fact that Dungeons and Dragons made the style section of the New York Times is certainly interesting for kids of a certain generation. I'll admit I played once, maybe twice, when I was I'm thinking fifth grade. Fifth or sixth grade, but I know some folks are very into Dungeons and Dragons. In 2019, there were reportedly 120,000 content creators using OnlyFans, a platform for creators to sell self-produced erotic content. By December 2020, that number had risen to more than 1 million. In 1 year, it went from 120,000 to 1 million. There's an article in the magazine about that. The comedian Michael Shea is the first Black person to become a head writer on Saturday Night Live. That's interesting. In arts and leisure, we could do a whole show about Saturday Night Live, and people can share their, which generation of stars they grew up watching. Sexually transmitted infections can irrevocably damage the reproductive system. At least 20,000 women are rendered infertile by untreated STIs in the U.S. each year. That's in the magazine. The Spotlight story is additional reportage and repartee from our journalists. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration issued its monthly report on climate trends on Thursday. The main takeaway: prepare for a scorcher of a summer. For those on the East Coast, we're getting a taste of that already. It was feeling like more than 100 degrees here in D.C. yesterday, and I think in New York as well. So let's take a look at what we have. The international section, helping female veterans heal with psychedelics in Mexico. We have on the right-hand side, Biden signs $40 billion aid bill as calls grow for a ceasefire. That's Ukraine, of course. Diplomatic solution remains remote, raising questions about what would constitute a victory for Kyiv. We have this is an article about the spiritual ally for Putin, the patriarch of the Russian Orthodox Church. Australian voters feeling discontent oust prime minister. That's news. Anthony Albanese Centre won as a Labour challenger to Australia's conservative incumbent. You still have Afghanistan in the news. We'll show the bottom half of the paper under our overhead cam. Afghan women protest Taliban cover-up decree. So that's still an evolving story. And then this is an interesting layout over here. If you look on the left-hand side, the world through a lens. A woman alone in Oman, 3 weeks along the Arabian coast. Now, I will say that I think it looks better on screen than it does on paper. The photo is fairly light, so it's kind of hard to tell. But you have some additional photos here. Photographs and article by Noah Avishag Shinal. This first picture is a Bangladeshi laborer harvesting the subkas or salt flats. The road between Dalkut and Sarfiat towns near the border with Yemen. And then commercial boats in the port of Kasab. This is getting further down on the page. which faces the Strait of Hormuz, and then a family from Kerala, India, visited the cascading waterfalls at Wadi Darbat. We'll want to take a look at what that looks like online, certainly. Let's see what else we have. Biden restores America's strategy toward the Korean Peninsula. Some advertising. This is for, I'm thinking Continental or United based on the graphic. It is United over here. It's hard to see the whole page. Once upon a plane, an airline set out to be a force for good. That's the tagline over there. One of the things that we're using is pencil cam to have a nice steady shot, an overhead shot. It works really well to show the top half of the paper, but not so great to show centerfolds. I'd be curious of what folks think, whether you like the nice overhead shot, or would you prefer a handheld camera so we could zoom in close and get the big picture as well. Let me know in the comments. And I see that Wayne was saying that the travel page was converted unsuccessfully from color to black and white somehow. So thank you, Wayne, for that comment. I think that's a reference to this, The World Through a Lens, A Woman Alone in Oman, on the left-hand side of the page. It's still, I mean, the photographs are still good. I think it's just that the top picture was a little lighter than maybe ideal. But thank you, appreciate that insight. So moving on, we have several pages. Wow, United really did pack a punch. And I think I'm going to take a look at the, yep, that's what I suspected. If you look at the bottom of the front page, you have this is the story of an airline when good leads the way, United. So let's push that up just a little bit on the left-hand side. No indication that there's going to be more in terms of advertising, but when you look inside, and I think I might have to switch to the camera to do this. So let's do that real quick. And so this is, I'm going to see if I can turn this. May have to turn. There we go. So here it is in terms of, let's see here. Oh. And there we go. So I was working to switch cameras on you so I could show you this United ad, this big centerfold, right? 2 pages here. 2 more pages from our travelers, our communities around the world, for our travelers, our communities, and the world, to diversify the skies and to create a more sustainable future. This is the story of an airline when good leads the way. You see this full spread. And it's interesting, I don't see a URL or anything to show the rest of the story, but that is a pretty significant ad buy for United. So again, I think that newspapers still matter. We're still getting advertising, which is good. This full page ad, our mission: run out of fabric. Fair Harbor was founded to protect our oceans by turning discarded plastic bottles into the world's most comfortable swimwear. Very strategically placed graphic there. Here's a full page ad. We have late onset Tay-Sachs. Do you know what it is? Allie and Katie Burke's story. So interesting in terms of the advocacy work there. And then we have the national section. Parched Lake Mead yields bodies and ghosts of old Las Vegas. We'll take this part of the paper, hide it underneath there for you. And here's that story from the front page, a big treatment here. Leader in the reading debate now backtracks. This is a story about, I forget the woman's name that pioneered this method. Let's see what else. Then more political news on the left and right here. Story about the Bush dynasty. And here's an interesting layout. This is on Trump's 2020 election lies, take root in state legislators' efforts to control vote. So again, if you look at the full 2-page spread, you see some interesting graphics. Swing states where Biden won, swing states where where Trump won in 2020. And it's looking at lawmakers, Republicans who sought to discredit or overturn the election by various means. It's an interesting study. The dark are the number of legislators that tried to discredit the election. So well done on that. So we'll keep the camera going. I didn't wait for folks to answer my question, but sometimes you need to adjust as you go, right? So let's move this out of the way. Let's spend some time with ransom. Again, this is a special section from the Times. We'll take these other papers, move them off to the side as well. Why not sneak a little Digimentors branding in there while we're at it, right? Ransom. This is right above the front page. Haiti cast off its shackles and beat Napoleon, the first modern nation born of slave revolt, but France made generations of Haitians pay for this freedom in cash. How much has remained a mystery until now? A team of journalists scoured thousands of pages of documents, some centuries old, to find the answer. And this is what that front page looks like. So we'll take a close look here and keep going. Keep going in here. So this is the inside 2 pages. Let's see if we can clear that out. You won't be able to see it if it's under my desk, right? So some interesting artwork on the left-hand side. Slave revolt in 1791 led to the end of France's notoriously brutal rule. And then this is a French bank that profited greatly in Haiti, helped finance the Eiffel Tower. And then Adrian present preparing coffee to sell. And so you can just see that picture here. This story is by Catherine Porter, Constant Mehut, Matt Upuzo, and Salam Gebrekedian. And I apologize for mispronouncing the names. The graphic design, the layout, was done by a friend of the show, Andrea Zagat, I believe. And really, really well done in terms of the special section. A land of riches, but not for its own people. So really should take a close look. Here is and timelines and graphics by Lazaro Gamillo and Allison McCann, paying in blood, then cash for freedom. This is all about long-time reparations or ransom that Haiti had to pay to France after independence. An investigative piece by the New York Times. It's a special section. It's I believe that there are additional stories coming out Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday in the regular section of the paper. I believe they're all online right now. If you go to our website, we have gift links to this story and a PDF of today's special section. So check that out if you get a chance. Go to our website. I know that Paula will share links to our website. Again, if you don't have a subscription to the paper, you can get a gift link from our website so you can read through these articles. Also look at the PDF. So here is the start of the story, and then this chapter, fertile soil soaked in human blood. Again, look at the layout, just great photography all around. To the losers go the spoils. Again, that's this section here. And then some of the documents, a tale of the archives. So let's check this out. Tallying the long-term costs to Haiti of the double debt is hardly straightforward, but government letters and reports scattered around France and Haiti made it a bit easier. French record keepers scrupulously noted, for example, the number of locked boxes bearing Haiti's wealth to come off a ship. And a French public bank kept track year after year of Haiti's payments to former French masters. These and other records reviewed by the Times are at the heart of this project. So you see the primary sources that were used in this research. And this section, section 4, tallying human worth down to the penny. Absolutely incredible. Absolutely incredible. Disaster by design. That's the headline here. The debts pile up. And you can see this chart that they put together. 1825, the double debt, when France demanded reparations and pushed a French loan to start paying them. The loan enriched French bankers. Haiti emptied its treasury to complete the first payment. 1 year later, Haiti ran out of money. Changes in inflation caused swings in the debt burden. Haiti and France renegotiated, and Haiti started paying again. Just incredible. Loans in 1874, 75, 1880, all the way. And then you have the U.S. Getting involved in the last 100 years or so. So much to unpack here. This culture of corruption. A bookish middle-aged doctor was elected president in 1957, Francois Duvalier, who had run a clinic training doctors to treat a disfiguring disease called yaws, promised to free the government from the grip of the country's elite and represent the other Haiti, the poor. Now, what's interesting is that, I remember in terms of my history, Francois Duvalier was known as Papa Doc, and his son, Baby Doc, if I'm not mistaken. They were widely regarded as dictators in Haiti. No mention of that in the lead here, which is interesting. But here it says, Dr. Francois Duvalier, the Haitian president, came at a moment of hope, but plunged the country into despair. So that might be the reference there. Chitachi says, I saw that France should be absolutely ashamed of themselves and pay huge reparations. Absolutely. Really no question about that. And Chitachi is watching from Fort Lauderdale. Thank you, Chitachi. And then she also says, wow, in reviewing the story, which is really, really something. Again, encourage you to check out gift links on our website for more, so you can get this section if you don't have a subscription. You can also get a PDF of the paper of this section if you're interested. So definitely go to digitmentors.group. You'll see a reference to the Jack Curry show. And that's where you want to look at. And then if you take the story forward, reparations, he cried, then was out. The Americans arrived at the gates of President Jean-Bertrand Aristide's house before dawn. February 29, 2004, flanked by security officers, a U.S. diplomat climbed the mansion steps to see the president and asked for his resignation letter before whisking him into exile. And this is an incredible story, but check out that picture. Just an incredible picture, taking up most of the page. Haiti Today, Part 8. The bitterest harvest is mise or mais. Not sure how to pronounce that. My apologies. So let's say the tiny scrapes of metal shovels on concrete echo outside the Vincent O. Coffee Cooperative. Using methods that hasn't changed for generations, workers scoop up the coffee beans, drying in the sun, and toss in wheelbarrows. So that is
interesting. The methodology is always interesting. The series is a work of 4 reporters and a dozen researchers. Together, we examine thousands of pages of primary documents found in private and public archives and libraries in Haiti, the United States, and France. And then the price of freedom, how a French bank captured Haiti, Wall Street's hands behind the U.S. invasion, ruffling feathers, and then exile. You can read it all at nytimes.com/Haiti-debt. You can also go to our website for that link, as I mentioned. So a really incredible report from the New York Times on this on Haiti's ransom. Definitely encourage you to check it out and to look for the follow-up stories that are coming online from this. I want to make sure that we get to any comments that might be in there, and if there are any corrections, please let me know. Wayne, I know that you're watching. If I did get anything wrong, let me know in the comments, and I can definitely put it on the screen. So that is the ransom from Haiti. So let's see what else we can cover in the paper. We have just a few more minutes left in today's show at 9:52. I think that I'm going to go ahead and pull out. You know what we haven't done in a long time? We don't have a lot of time, but let's go to the magazine and let's see if we can find the poem. And we can go ahead and close with the poem. So this is on page 10. Longtime viewers will know that we used to read the poem at the end of each show, and I think we've gone away from that a little bit. As Sri always liked to say, that we would, a poem should be read by the author because they know the cadence, they know where the emphasis should be, etc. It should never be read cold. But that's, in fact, what we had done for quite a long time on the New York Times Read Along, and we'll get back to today. This poem by Ludmila Kurzhansky begins in medias res with a dead body rather than the death itself, followed by a pile of urgent questions. We find ourselves suspended in a state of unknowing. The sequence of 5 practical questions in rapid succession mirrors a distressed mind's movements before we switch to the second person and the Lord's critique of his creation. By the poem's end, the speaker returns, attempting to transcend the merely practical into the first-person universal of a we. But that transcendence is only momentary. Readers find themselves returned to the matter-of-fact questions of war. So let's go ahead and share this week's poem. Buried in a human neck, a bullet. Buried in a human neck, a bullet looks like an eye sewn in. An eye looking back at one's fate. Who shot him there? Who gave the order? Which man? Who will bury him, and what's the rate? When it comes to humanity, war is the beginning and end. Whoever attacks you, don't turn your back, says the Lord. For my people are foolish, they have not known me. They are silly children, and they have no understanding, but the children feel as strong as their machinery, mass-produced with plenty of seamstresses for repairing. Some ladies patch holes, others fix neck bones, still more so on buttons that were torn away from hands. And the Lord says, they are wise in doing evil. But, says the Lord, they do not know how to do good. But the children, if they survive, say it was luck. And if they die, they think that was yesterday. Today is another day. And the seamstresses stand with a shroud, telling them, put this on. How long must we put up with the flags, the trumpets, calling us into the fray? What beast has awakened? Where did our special forces land? Who shot that man in the back? Who gave the command? Who will bury him? And what's the rate? That's the poem in this week's edition of the New York Times Magazine by Ludmila Kurzhansky, translated by Olga Livshin and Andrew Janko from the Russian. So thank you again for joining us today. We want to make sure that you join us next week as well. We will be doing a special show on Memorial Day weekend. Amy Vership will be our guest. She is the editor of the travel section, and she is going to be joining us to talk about a special section in that week's paper. Sorry, we'll put myself back on the screen. And the correction that I mispronounced Andrea's name. She did the design for the special section on Haiti, and it's Zagata. I said Zagat, and I apologize for that. But thank you, Wayne, for that correction. Want to thank everyone for joining us. A couple of quick announcements. If you didn't get a chance to catch Rose Horowitz's Women to Follow show last week, please go back and find that. She did a special show, Will Rose Survive? What to Know About Our Bodies and Privacy. It was last Monday, May 16th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. As always, we want to thank our production team, Paula Kiger, Steve Taylor, Julia Weeks, and Carla Baranakis. And of course, when we talk about Carla, we also want to talk about and highlight the Local Connection newsletter. The Local Connection newsletter is brought to you by the Center for Cooperative Media at Montclair State University. Each week, they offer story ideas and pro tips for journalists. Best of all, it's free. Subscribe at bit.ly/local news tips. bit.ly/local news tips. And of course, the New York Times Read Along is produced by Digimentors, the consulting firm that Sri started with his friend Andrew Lee several years ago. I am proud to be a vice president of events and communications with Digimentors. We do social digital consulting, virtual event production, hybrid events, event amplification, talk shows, podcasts, etc. If you're interested in having us work with you on a production, please email us, Sri@digimentors.group or Neil@digimentors.group. We'd love to work with you. And of course, we also want to thank our sponsor, Muckrack, a longtime sponsor of the New York Times Read Along. Thank you for all of your support. We had a great show today. If you joined us late, Jack Curry was our guest. We had a great conversation with him at the top of the show. And you can always go back after we finish, after the show concludes. You'll be able to watch on the same platforms, on Facebook, on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, or on our Digimentors website. You'll be able to watch from the beginning. So we certainly encourage you to do that. With that, we look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you. Have a great weekend. Again, our guest this week was Jack Curry, longtime writer for the New York Times and a sports writer covering the Yankees, and now an analyst for the Yes Network. He is the co-author of Paul O'Neill's book, Swing and a Hit, which comes out on Tuesday, May 24th. Have a great weekend, everyone. Bye-bye.